certify the signatures on the document themselves. But it has nothing, it's so fascinating. So fascinating. So you could have a situation of Kiyum Shtaris, which makes sense, I would say, because otherwise, if Kiyum Shtaris requires a whole certification of the transaction, then what's the point of the shtar? And what does the shtar do? The shtar, right, the edus on the shtar locks in the transaction. Kiyum Shtaris certifies the signature. So this is incredible. So I will say, in a case where Reuben was a dying for Kiyum Shtaris, and I let play this out, right? So Levi sells a field to Shimon, and then what happens? They draw up a document, and now they want to bring the document to Beis Din for certification. Reuben is one of the Dayanim on the Beis Din to certify. Right, Reuben's Beis Din certifies the document, and then after it's certified, Reuben says to Shimon, by the way, the field is stolen from you. Everyone agrees in that case, Reuben has a valid claim. When we say Reuben has a valid claim, obviously saying something was stolen from you is not a claim. Right? I mean, it's a claim. What it means is Reuben now has the right to what? Pursue that claim. Right? So again, why? And everyone agrees in that case. Everyone agrees in that case. Why? Because Reuben's acting as a guy for Kiyum Shtaros has nothing to do with the transaction. All Reuben was doing was just saying, oh yeah, the signatures, we can say, we can speak, you guys recognize the signatures, fantastic. Good, sign it up, right, and then we're done. Certified, we're done. So everyone agrees in that case that in no way erodes his claim to go ahead and pursue the stolen, right, the stolen claim. The that was stolen from him. Now, Sha'in came when he's a witness to the actual transaction, sale from Levi to Shimon. In that case, again, part of signing on a shtar is what? You are claiming the transaction itself is valid. Come say, you claim the transaction is valid, you can't go ahead and now claim that same person is stolen from you. Admon says, yes, I can. The transaction was valid. In other words, yes, Levi sold to Shimon. But at the end of the day, it's my life. Good. So says the Gemara. I saw a similar act. I was supposed to say the next case the Mishnah was, I remember again. Right? So same case, but let's say, not same case. In this case, Shimon the purchaser, Shimon the purchase contested property, we call it parcel A. Shimon is selling parcel B and uses parcel A to identify the borders of parcel B. Reuben himself signs on that shtar as well, and not as well, but Reuben sells on that shtar. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that after he sells on that shtar, he no longer has the right to pursue anything that belongs to him. That parcel is there. Rabbi, lo shana ela la'achad. That's only true ultimately against Rashi. So lo shana la'achad. God cannot masnis simon la'achad. אבל עשה המוחזק בה סימן לעצמו שלובין זעורה לעשות. Listen to this. That's only true when what? When Shimon is selling the parcel to someone else. What happens if Shimon is selling the parcel to Reuben himself? Shimon is selling parcel B to Reuben. And now it happens to be in that sale, Shimon uses parcel A, which is the contested property, as a border identification. But ultimately, in that case, even though Reuben, right, Reuben did not go ahead and lose out on his ability to reclaim parcel A. Why? The Amar, because he would say, if I would not agree to this, they'll have a masbun le'mihiri. And ultimately, again, Shimon would not sell me the property. In other words, I will say, the concern over here is that if Shimon knows that Reuben is going to be claiming parcel A, he's going to be reticent to what? Sell a parcel B. So Reuben wants to buy parcel B. If I lodge my complaint now, then I'm not going to get parcel B. And certainly, again, leaving aside parcel A. So the Gemara says, "My Yisrael Cholomim." So what could Reuben have done? He violated the Memar Moda. So maybe, like I said, maybe what Reuben could have done is that before he purchases parcel B from Shimon, put aside the witness and say, listen, don't tell you guys. I'm purchasing parcel B from Shimon. In the transaction, Shimon is saying that parcel B, right, borders on Shimon's other parcel A. Guys, I just want to tell you, Reuben is saying this is like a sidebar. I'll tell you guys, parcel A is really minor. Also, we're still not saying anything now. He's not allowed to on this transaction. Maybe that's what we should say. Make a moda, machor. Right, let him go. Someone says, yeah, that'll work really well. Chavra is like the chavra is like. This is great. Like your friend has a friend, and the friend of your friend has a friend. which Rabbi says another way of saying, don't rely on anyone's confidentiality. Right? So the nice again, if Ruben says something so to speak in confidence to the witnesses, they're going to say something. And what's going to happen? It's going to cause the whole transaction partially to fall into jeopardy. Good. The Gemara says as follows. So the cover is that who saw similar after. So what says now? Listen to this. In this case, so the case over here is. So let's go back. So we'll say so. This is just a unique case over here. So remember, let's go back. The Mishnah said that in a case where Ruvain is now signs on a shtar, right, is a witness to a document where Shimon is selling parcel B to another party, but in parcel B he's using parcel A, the contested parcel, as one of the borders. And Ruvain signs on that document. Ruvain gives up his right to further to any more claim parcel A. That's only true. Now Abai gives a qualification. That's true if Shimon was selling it to another party. But if Shimon was selling it to Ruvain himself, so Ruvain doesn't object to the use of parcel A as a border, that's because Ruvain doesn't want to call into jeopardy the whole transaction. Fine. So now go back to the original case. Who does us in the office? So let's go back to the Mishnah's original case. Right? So the Mishnah's original case. So Allah I say now. So Ruvain is an aid on the shtar where Shimon is selling parcel B using parcel A as a border. So what happens? Here are the Shemon. So we'll say after the transaction happens, now what happens? So Ruvain claims, by the way, parcel A is mine. But what happens? Shafik, then he died. Ruvain died. Right, so Ruvain died. This is the process, right? Right? Ruvain died after raising the objection to the ownership of parcel A. Okay. What happens? The opening up the trunk. We'll say, so now again, so after Reuben passed away, right, either Reuben made decisions for this beforehand, or the Bezin appointed an apotropos. Now there's an executor of Reuben's estate. Okay, so Asa Apotropos coming with Abaye, so the apotropos came before Abaye, Amarle, saw similar. So now what happens? The apotropos is coming. Why is he coming? The apotropos is saying, listen, before Ruvain died, Ruvain claimed that field A belonged to him. So the apotropos says, I am coming to follow up on that claim. Okay, so Abai says, listen, there's no claim. It's an explicit Mishnah. We already learned this case. Ruvain signed onto this document where Shimon used field A as a border identification for field B. And the Mishnah says once you do that, you go ahead and you relinquish all of your rights. Nothing more to talk about. To which the apotropos says, you're right, but Amar Hava Avason Yasmikayim Avakaim Amar Helem Efarasisiya. Very interesting. So we'll say, so the apotropos says, if Ruben was still alive, what Ruben would say is yes. I agreed, I signed a document where Ruben used field A as a border to field B. But really the only thing I was agreeing to was that perhaps Shimon owns a narrow strip of field A. A narrow strip of field A. That's what he owned. So he goes, anyway, Shabir Ka'amat. So truth is that's a good flavor. Rabbi Yochanan, so we'll say it's actually very interesting. That the claim over here is that Allah right? That if I go ahead, Rabbi Yochanan says, let's say I sold you a field, right? The field is mine, and the only thing I sold you in that field was a narrow strip. Such a claim could actually be believed. So the Gemara is supposed to see what's happening over here. So in other words, Ruvain signed on this document that where Shimon was selling a field to another party, Shimon was selling field B. The field B was sold with a border identification of field A. Ruvain signed on it. After Ruvain signed on it, the transaction happened. Ruvain said, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi. After that, Ruvain dies. Apotropos comes along and tries to selling up the affairs of the state. They come to Abaye, and the Apotropos listen. Ruvain claimed the stolen field was his. Abaye says that's fine. Field A was his. He says that's fine, but it's a Mishnah. Right? Ruvain signed on that document. He signed that document using field A as a border to field B. He abdicated all rights to the field. To To which the apotropos says, no, perhaps if he was here, would claim all Shimon really owned in that field was just a narrow strip. That's what he was identifying as the border. To which Abaye says, that's a good kind of. But ultimately, again, we still should have to go ahead. So in other words, now Abaye says the apotropos, even if that's a good claim, so that's fine, but you still have to leave in Shimon's possession a narrow strip. So Havi Alei, Rivchad B'tikvah. So we'll say, here's the problem. On the narrow strip, there was a line of palm trees, which made that narrow border strip pretty valuable. So the Gemara says, so I know that you have This is great. The says, if Reuben was alive, he could claim, while it's true that I sold that border strip back to Shimon, I then subsequently repurchased it. Abaye says, truth is, I really shocked her to saying, good. Then Rabbi Yochanan, so we'll say, ultimately, again, Reuben were to claim, I sold it, but then I repurchased it, you believe. And we'll say, the reason that is because this is Rashi says, Pesha Asar wa Pesha Hitya. In other words, we'll say, the case of Erzazal, look at Rashi, Naaman, here's the case, just to get the case in its totality. Naaman, the Pesha Asar wa Pesha Hitya, the Me'achar Shish, Edim Shaisa Shalom. So we'll say, the case over here is where, remember, Shimon sold the field, Hidden sold the field for Shimon. Reuben, and then again, it gets more complicated. But now what happens? So now you have Reuben, sorry. Now you have Shimon. Let's just bring it all together. Here we go. Bring it all together. You have Levi selling the field to Shimon. Field A. Okay, fine. Now what happens? Shimon sells field B to another party. But in that transaction, he uses field A as a border identification. Reuben signs on that shtar, that bill of sale that Shimon makes for the party of field B. Afterwards, what happens? Shimon, so Reuben says, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi and sold to you, Shimon. So remember again, the street halacha in the Mishnah is we don't believe Reuben. You sign on that document, we don't believe you. I will say, in this case, it's becoming a little bit more complicated. In this case, what happens is, Reuben goes ahead and claims the field is stolen from him. Not only that, Reuben brings witnesses. He brings Eidos. That's Rashi's only the blank over here. He brings witnesses. And I will say, after he goes in and brings witnesses, what happens? He dies. Okay, now what happens? Apotropos comes to Abaye. Apotropos says, listen, I'm here to help on Reuben's claims. Abaye says, there is no claim. It's a Mishnah. Reuben signed on the document. Apotropos says, but he has Eidos. Abaye says, hold on a second. Essentially, the Eidos is negated in the face of what? Reuben's signature. In other words, once Reuben signs on that document, he effectively signs away his rights. Which the Apotropos says, no. What you understand is, he actually went ahead and sold back, right? He sold to Shimon a strip of land. Okay. So now what you're telling me is, when Reuben signed the document, he wasn't yielding his rights to the rest of the field. What was he acknowledging? That Shimon owns a strip of land of field A that borders on field B, but that in no way is yielding his rights to the rest of field A. That's good. But Abaye says, okay, that's fine, so now you can pursue your claim on the rest of field A. But what? But you have to go ahead and at least leave in Shimon's possession what? The strip of land. To which Apotropos says, but 1 second, there's more to the story. Reuben bought back the strip of land from Shimon. He bought it back. To which Abaye says, which is saying, look, why? Because I will say, this is a pasha, why? Because the only way we knew about the sale was through Reuben. Right? In other words, right through Reuben. We didn't know about the sale. Without the sale, all you would have is what? His aide was saying that the mice of the field was stolen from Reuben. So now Reuben, so to speak, is telling us that a sale happened of the strip. Now Ruben is further qualifying and telling us after the sale occurred, Ruben bought it back from Shimon. It's a pesha, also a pesha case, in which case Ruben / the apotropos should be believed. And it turns out that Ruben should really be able to walk away, assuming he could prove his claim that he should really be able to walk away with the field in its entirety, including the strip of palm trees. Incredible. Amar Abaye, so what's the takeaway from the story? Amar Abaye, I man the mocha apotropa, no kim ki ad yada la apuka discuss the aspect. Also, the entire takeaway is you got to get an apotropos like this, right there. I would say this is you gotta surround yourself with good people. Like this apotropos Abaye says knew exactly what he was doing. Good. So let's say so for our purposes, Allah Maisa. How do we pause this? We'll say this is a complicated case. That is a very complicated case. Remember again, we'll say what we have essentially embedded in this case is a couple of different cases. Just because I'm just going to tell you quickly. Rambam Paskins, this is in Hilchos Toin V'Nitan, Perek Tes Zayin, Halachas Aleph and Beis. We're not going to have time for everything. I'm going to leave out the Telem case. I'm just going to give you the Mishnah. Here it is. Reuben Shemaka the Shimon Sada. Reuben sold the field to Shimon. Bahaya Levi okay, so Rambam changed this today. So I'm going to keep it like we had it, right? So we'll say, so Levi sold the field to Shimon, and Reuben was one of the witnesses on the shtar. And what happens? Subsequently, right? Reuben claims after the transaction occurs. Reuben claims that what? That Allah Kalamaisa, Levi stole it from me. Aim Shomer. The Rambam passes like the no. Even though you I remember again, you're going to claim, yes, I signed on it because I wanted it to go from Levi to Shimon because I feel a better chance getting my field back from Shimon than from Levi. The Rambam says, case closed. Halacha l'maisa, right? Halacha l'maisa. There's absolutely nothing to talk about once you are party to the transaction, right? Once you are a witness on that shtar, you have effectively ceded and yielded any right that you have to bring that field as your right. However, the Rambam says, if Reuben acted as a dayan in Kiyuv Shtaris, he does not yield receive any future rights. Again, going back to the distinction of the Gemara. In Allah Maisa, an aid certifies the transaction. A dayan only certifies signature. So they will say, Allah Maisa, you don't pass like Admon in this Mishnah, you pass like that. There's more. Much more. Again, Hilchos Toin V'Nitan, Perek Zayin, Halachas Aleph and Beis. Take a look at it at your own. A lot more interesting ideas, but that's the halacha. Good. Mishnah quickly. Misha halacha Medina Sayam Ve'Iblo Derech Sadeh. So again, it just gets better. Listen to this case. And I will say, by the way, you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Subas? So first of all, it's so good, so who cares? Right? That's answer number one. That's answer number one. So I'll say, so remember again. The reason, just so you know, in all seriousness, the reason why we're doing this is because remember, the way this parak started off were with the rulings of Admon and Hanan. And remember again, it started off with a discussion about Mizonos, that's which is Ksuvas. Now, let's say we're just going through all of their rulings. Watch this great case. Misha, Allah Kumudina says, we'll say, watch this case. Reuben goes overseas. Now, Reuben owns a field. Now, we'll say, interesting enough, the case over here is Reuben's field is landlocked, which means that the only way he was ever able to get into his silver's house, he had a right of way. He had a right of way with someone. So what happened? So Misha, so let's say, so now what's the problem? Because he's been away for a while, he can't remember the right of way. Where is my right of way to get into my field? And of course, as one can imagine, none of the neighbors are being forthcoming. Right? No, because obviously no one wants to give up that. No one wants to give up that land. So Admon Omer, Yelech Lo B'Tzara. Admon says, look, since we have to use logic, figure out what is the shortest way to get into this field. Right? And let's assume that was the previously established right of way. The Chum say no. Yikna Lo B'Derech B'Mei Amana or Yifrach Ba'adin. You have a choice. Either go ahead and pay top dollar, whoever's willing to negotiate with you, or fly. Right? In other words, right or fly. Figure out a way to fly. Right? So again, this is actually interesting. Come say, listen, Reuben, you went overseas, you lost your information. The burden is on you. So pretty much, again, No one has to do anything for you, so you're going to have to figure out a way to negotiate for top dollar right of passage. Let's analyze. So my time with the Rabbanon, Shabbat Rabbanon. So I don't understand. What's the logic of the Rabbanon? It's the reason why the Rabbanon's position doesn't seem to make sense is if there's one thing we know, it's that what? It's that what? Ruvain had a right of way. He had a right of way. Right? I'll tell you soon. But the right of way, even today, I love this move I built. The right of way agreements are like you would think it should be the simplest part of a real estate transaction. It's incredible how complicated right of way agreements are. It's fascinating. In any event, so the says, as far as I understand, obviously he has a right of way. This was his field. He used the field. He was getting in and out of his field, so there was a right of way agreement. So Admon is saying, listen, logically, he's going to take in the easiest path. So just assume that's the path he had. What's logic of the rabbi? All right, you know it out. Watch this. You don't shiki plus. I gave it away a little bit. I'm sorry. Shiki plus are bought b'nei adam and I gave it away. In other words, this is a landlocked field. There's 4 different people. So they'll say, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is, if you can imagine, right, when he comes back, everyone says, Shalom Aleichem, they make a Kiddush, it's so beautiful. And then he goes to neighbor number 1. By the way, was right away through here? No, right here. Right neighbor 2, no, not here either. 3, 4. So we'll say, the problem is, each has the ability to deflect it to the other. So this is one of these interesting cases where we know a right of way exists, but Ruben can't figure out a way to enforce it against any one particular party. If that's the case, then again, why does Admon say that Ruben seemingly sees the shortest right of way? So there's Amarava, very quickly, Ba'arba the Asamikah Arba. So Ba'arba the Asamikah Had, Kuli Amalo Pli, the Matzimatki. So let's listen to this. You have 4 people who bought their own respective fields from 4 other people. Or for that matter, 4 people who bought their fields from 1 person. Everyone agrees in that case, each party could deflect to someone else. Keeply, Gemara says, so Keeply, where does my like this now? Let's listen to this. The Chad, the Asimika Hada. So watch this. I will say, let's say now all 4 fields, all 4 of the landlocked fields, or the landlocked fields, are all owned by 1 person. Right? So you've got Reuben in the middle, and all 4 of the surrounding fields are owned by 1 person. I will say, what? Bought it from 4 individual owners. So in this case over here, we'll call him Shimon. Shimon now owns the 4 fields which surround Reuben's field, and Shimon bought it from 4 independent people. Watch this. So Admon says, listen, Reuben can go up to Shimon. Give me a right of way. You know that I own a right of way. You can figure out where, but you own, I own it, so give it to me. Doesn't listen to this. But Rabbanan say, listen to this. Shimon can say to Reuben like this. Shatak. If you're going to be quiet. We love to make up. So this is this. Shimon can say to Reuben, here's the deal. If you want to negotiate, you negotiate. If you're going to make problems, I'm going to return the land to the previous 4 owners. It's going to be owned by 4 independent people, and therefore what they're saying, Reuben will never be able to get your right of way. Why? Because each of them could deflect you to the other. So, if you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. But if you're going to claim Magiali, right, something's owed to me, I'll simply go ahead and return the land, and then you'll be stuck forever. Incredible. So the Gemara says, so I'm sorry. Who Damalu, I will say quickly, finish up the sugya. Who Damalu, a guy says, Who Damalu, Tikla Libras. So listen to this. A guy, Reuben, is about to die. Right before he dies, he says, I want my daughter to inherit the palm tree. He's giving a palm tree to his daughter. Also, Yasmi, say, so Reuben dies, and his sons went ahead and divided up the estate, but didn't give the palm tree to the daughter. Right? Also, Yasmi, Rabbi Yosef Lememar, I'm the Masnishin. Rabbi Yosef wanted to say the Mishnah. Why? What can I? The donor wants to go ahead and come to the palm tree. Right? And each son could say what? Each one could say what? Oh, not from my portion, from his portion, from his portion. I mean, that buy it's not a good comparison. So let's listen to this. Here's the difference. So let's say, in the case of the right of way really only does exist on one field. When it comes to the daughter's right to a palm tree, that is a right that revolves upon all of their inheritance portions. So therefore, Michael, What should we do? What they should do is give her a palm tree, and then redivide the estate minus the palm tree. That's what should happen. Okay, we'll say very quickly. Have a nice evening. I'm sorry, just give me literally 1 more minute and we'll stop. Actually, we'll say we'll stop over here for today. We'll just pick up with this very last piece of message. I tried. Okay, we'll say Shkoyach. Again, great week ahead of us. In Eretz Hashem, Shkoyach. All right, everyone, have a great day, everyone. All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin. Hashem, a great visit us to enter into our last week of the Sefes Ksuvas. I want to go ahead and begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Should thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei. To thank Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah and Ricky Grants, Julia, Rena, and Eve. Loving memory, dedicated to share this month. Loving memory of their husband, father, and leader, Dr. Paul Weinberg. Eretz Moshe Ben Avraham David. Thank Ayala and Celestine for dedicating the Shiur in this month in the space of Rabbi Rothschild for Shulamis Bas Susha. And the Adam repeat by Zeb in the space of all of our fields being established in Hashem. I read the learning sponsors. Avram Zeisman, inspiration of the Eretz of his grandmother, of his grandfather, Avraham Ben Aaron, Zvi and Shady Shir. In honor of the Kiva and Elliot, Shmuel and Shira Pepper, in honor of Ari Lerner and all he does for the show. Beautiful, incredible, beautiful. Also, to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today. Alan and Andrea Stowis, in honor of the Bas Mitzvah of their granddaughter, Kayla Rosenblum, which she wrote both Torah and Mitzvahs in the Shtafis to entire family to all of the Bas Mitzvah. Beautiful. We'll see with that, let us begin very excited. First of all, very exciting Gemara in general, and also to recognize it. It's always beautiful when there's like this confluence of events. We're finishing in the Sefta on Rosh Chodesh, so we're ending things, beginning things, closing out Chodesh Tishrei, beginning Teshvan. Teshvan and Yom Hashem is such excitement when we're in Sefta. We'll say let's begin today. That is Kuf Ches 109. We are picking up in Yom Hashem on the bottom of Kuf Ches 7 days. 108b. 108b. We left off. We left off yesterday at the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows: Aposek knows the custom. It's a very interesting case. Someone promises money to his son-in-law. An age-old story, right? So someone promises money to his son-in-law. Now, I will say in this particular case, what's holding over here is like this. Essentially, we're talking about a dowry. So imagine for a moment that Reuven is marrying Rachel. Rachel's father promises Reuven some amount of money. And what happens? And then the father-in-law extends his foot. So we'll say, what does it mean extends his foot? So again, extends his foot. It means the father-in-law doesn't help. So Rachel's father doesn't pay the dowry. Now look at Asher just a moment. Loshen Bizayon Amar Noach Sheinu Chashdik Varav Kol tit sha'al gabi Rabbi. This is interesting. This Talmudic expression of extending your foot means essentially, I'm giving you nothing. Take the dirt that's on my shoe. Take the dirt. Now, in general, what this sounds like is the father-in-law is intentionally not giving his son-in-law the money. But the truth is, the case doesn't have to be set up that way. That's just the way that's the Mishnah is saying. So, here, take the dirt that's on my foot. I'm not giving you any money. The point over here is, father-in-law promised money and now is not delivering. So let's say, now the problem we're in is what? Kiddushin has already taken place. So Reuven was already Mekadosh Rachel. Nisuin has not yet been done. Father-in-law indicates that whatever the situation is, he will not pay the money. What's that? Top of the test. Rosha. The Chachamim say, ultimately again, literally she has to sit there until her hair goes gray, which means she's stuck. Rachel's stuck. That, in other words, at this point in time, the control is in Reuven's hands, and either he can make a choice to marry her, right? Or ultimately just wait and do nothing until her father pays her. After all, again, there was an agreement. That was made. Rachel's father is not honoring the agreement. So again, moving the law to a holding pattern until his father-in-law pays the agreement. Admon says, Rachel could say to Reuven, so Admon says like this. Rachel could say to Reuven, listen, I, Rachel, was going to promise you money. If I was going to promise you money, then you can hold it over my head. If you can hold it over my head, then you can essentially, hold me in this marriage until either I pay you or until I pay you. But again, Achshav, Sha'aba Pasach, Nani Yifragalasos, Okinos, Okidor. So she says, what do you want from me? My father comes to this. So you're going to hold me accountable, you're going to punish me for my father's actions. So Reuben, either marry me, right me soon, or divorce me. So they say, so Rabbi Rothschild says, I think Adon is correct. So therefore they say, fundamental machlokes. Once again, just to reframe the case. So Rachel's going to get married to Reuben. Rachel's father promises Reuben $10,000. Right? That's the junior, that's the dowry. Reuben does Kiddush. Now father-in-law says, I'm not giving you, I can't give you, I won't give you, whatever it is. The point is, he's not giving. So now the Chachamim say, Reuben has every right to essentially hold Rachel in this marriage until her father decides to pay. And ultimately if he doesn't pay, so then Rachel is going to grow old in a state of Kiddushin. Admon says that's not right. It's not right. Right? Ultimately, again, if I say about it, even the Chachamim are not necessarily saying it's right. The Chachamim are just saying it's legal. Because this is technically a legal recourse that he has to force his father-in-law's hand. So Rachel does that. So Admon says that Rachel can say to Rachel, that's not right. I didn't enter into this agreement with you. My father did. Why are you punishing me for the default of my father? Listen, don't keep me in limbo. Either marry me or divorce me. I think Allah follows Amon. Let's go. So now speaking below Kiyaitana. Mishnah does not reflect the view of the following time. As in which time we don't know what case. This time, I'm Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, no name the Chachamim ala Hosek knows the first name. With Pasha Boas Haregal, she only Kisha Tomar Abba Hasak Alai, Ma Ani Yechola Lasos. So it was very interesting. A different twist over here. In this price, I'm quoting the same case. But in this case, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda posits every one of these in a case where the father defaulted on the agreement he made that Reuven can't hold Rachel hostage in this marriage. The Rachel has every right to say, I didn't default. Either marry me or divorce me, but don't keep me in this state. Sa'ama definitely. So learn as in the focus Chachamim and Admon. Asher koske he alatzma. I will say in the Bryce's version, when the father defaulted, everyone agrees that Reuven can't hold Rachel. I just didn't need to say it. Everyone is going to agree that on a conceptual level, a man should never hold his wife in a marriage. Like that's never something that Chazal want. Why the Kodesh Baruch Hu created the system of giving in a way which seems to give the husband much more power, sometimes even absolute power? I don't know. That's a question that you're going to ask. We have to ask Kodesh Baruch Hu that question after 1920. Or Eliyahu Navi will come. Eliyahu will explain to us why the halachos of giving seem to really be heavily slanted to give the man the power. But again, this is a legal discussion. So legal discussions sometimes do not enter into the arena of what is right. Right? We all know this. That we teach this to our kids. Just because something is mutter, right? Just because it's permissible does not mean it should be done. So again, we're talking about what's permissible, right? So for Chachamim say again, it's permissible for him to use the marriage as leverage to go ahead and extract money from his father. It's legal. It's legal. Is it right? Is it right? Of course it's not right. Of course it's not right. So it's just important to understand that. Which I know everyone does, but sometimes it's just simple. Like as you get older, especially, you learn that even when everyone knows something, it's still important to say. I know I said, by the way, this extends, all of it. Person has to dissolve a marriage. Again, should never ever be used as leverage. Again, should never be used as a mechanism, as a tool to extract something from a husband. Like, it's not what Chazal, it's not what Shbarfi wants, it's not what Chazal wants. And the truth is, nothing good ever comes from hurting another human being, and nothing good ever comes by using halacha as a means of extortion. Okay, but back to our so again, so the Brisa has a different view on this, right? So in the Brisa's version, we have Chachamim and Admon both agree that what? That Allah made the financial arrangement with Ruvain, and that the father defaults, or almost again, default doesn't pay whatever it is from Rabbi Yehuda, that Allah Lamaisa, Rachel says to Ruvain, even marrying your husband, but you cannot keep me in this divorce state. So what's the machlokes versus Israel? What's the machlokes? What happens if Rachel promised to Ruvain money? Right, so before they do kiddushin, Rachel says to Ruvain, listen, you mekadosh me, and if you're mekadosh, I'm going to give you $10,000. Okay, so now what happens? Ruvain's mekadosh Rachel, and then what happens? Rachel doesn't pay. Won't pay, can't pay, doesn't pay. The Chachamim say to the Chachamim promise, the Aaron Reuben is not familiar to do Nisuin with you until you figure this out. So you can go into a holding pattern over here until you, Rachel, figure out how to satisfy the obligation you entered into. Admon says, listen to this, Admon says, so what could she say in this case? This is great. She says, no. When I said I'm going to give you $10,000, I figured the same bank that has been bankrolling my life up until this point in time, right? It's incredible. No credit limits, right? No pre-qualifications, nothing. I figured the same bank that was taking care of me my entire life is going to take care of me now. So she said, I know I said that I was going to pay you. But again, I automatically assumed that it was my father who was going to go ahead and pay for this nidula. The aksha she'in avanosing alai ma'an rasos okinos okdor. So she says, what do you want from me? I guess, in other words, what Rachel says, I'm not purposely being difficult over here. I never had the money to back up this promise, right? I never had the money to back up the promise. It was always going to be my father. Now my father doesn't want to pay. Okay, don't hold me hostage in this relationship. Either marry me or divorce me. So I just want to point out over here, so the is now explaining that there's two versions of this machlokes. In our Mishnah's version, right, the machlokes case is where the father of the bride, the father of Rachel promised and then doesn't pay. Chachamim say, okay, Reuven can wait, Reuven can do nothing, Reuven can go into a holding pattern until the shver pays off. Right? Admon says she could say to him, this is not my fault. That's my fault. Either divorce me or marry me, but don't go and keep me in this holding state. Right? Raisa now says, no. In that case where the father defaults, everyone agrees that Rachel could tell Reuben either divorce me or marry me, residing two people. What's the matter of this case? Where Rachel promises the money. So the Chachamim say, listen, Rachel, you made a promise. Make good on the promise. If you don't make good on the promise, Reuben has under obligation towards you. You go into a holding pattern. Admiral says, no. When Rachel says, I made the promise, it was my father. I was relying on my father. So ultimately, don't hold it against me. Either marry me or divorce me. Incredible. I don't know what Gamliel says, and therefore saying the Bryce also Gamliel raw and he has to get Admiral. Again, in the Bryce, you have Rabbi Gamliel agreeing with Admiral. So Tana, so let's analyze this. When is this so? When is this so? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Dola about the kind of Kofin. They say when is all of this said? Right, exclusively with the Bryce. Every time you have the adult girl. But with a Kitano, with a minor, we will force him, we will force him. So the says, Kofin the mind. Force who? Force who to do what? If ultimately at the end of the day we're talking about forcing the father to pay off, so we'll say it makes much more sense to force the father in a case of the Gedola than it does to force him in a case of the Kitana. Why? Because we'll say if we're talking about a case where the Kitana promised money, right? Rachel was promised money to Reuben. What's the halachic rate of that promise? Not there. That's what is. So if you're talking about a case where you're forcing the father to pay up, it makes more sense to force the father to pay up in a case where the Gedola daughter made a commitment. So the Gemara says, they play by the way. Ella Amarava hoping the Baal leaking get. And the Rabbi says, no. What it means is we force the husband to give a get. So it's like, halacha, so we're talking about a case of a kitana. So because the weight of the kitana, and the commitment of the kitana, ultimately again, not binding. Therefore, halacha, in the case of the kitana, will force the husband to give a get. We'll see how that plays out in the Rambam, which is a little bit. I don't need to be the especially the piece of it. Come back, and so I said, let's finish this piece out, and then we'll go back to the Rambam. So listen to this. So Amar Rav Yitzchak ben Elazar Moshe the Chizkiah. Come back and show me Gamliel raw and yesterday Admon. So we're going to say now we're going back to the Mishnah. Any time that you find that Rabbi Gamliel says, right? Any place where you find Rabbi Gamliel said halacha follows Admon, halacha kumosa. The halacha indeed follows. Only Rabbi Nachman, even a good guy. So it's actually the guys are just in the Mishnah. In other words, now we're saying whenever Rabbi Gamliel says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. So is that true just in a Mishnah? And the Bible says, well, did I say just in a Mishnah? Listen to what I'm saying. I said any place. Any place means what? A Mishnah or a Brisa. Any time that the Gamliel says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. Incredible. I'm going to see on Rabbi Yirmiyah, based on Shama Hanan halacha Yotzei. Right, ultimately, and so listen to this. Now, let me say this in the Bible, yeah? In the two situations, ultimately again, where, based on Shamra Hanan, Kiyotzebo, right, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that halacha follows Hanan, Shiva Gram Shamra Admon in halacha Kiyotzebo, but ultimately again, the 7 cases where Admon said the halacha, and if the Gamliel said that the halacha like Admon, the halacha does not follow Admon. So, right, what does this mean? Shnei Dvarim Shamar Hanan halacha kimoso ukiyotzebo. There's a meaning like this: the two halachas that Hanan brought down, and ultimately again kiyotzebo, those who classify like Hanan, the halacha follows them. The Shiva Dvarim Shamar Admon ein halacha kimoso ukiyotzebo. The 7 cases that are brought up in the name of Admon, the halacha neither follows Admon nor like the ones who classify like Admon. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Moshe the Chizkiah. Welcome Shomar Rabbi Gamliel Ron as Tivre Admon Alech. So we just said before, that any time that the Gamliel said, I see the words of Admon to be correct, like the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, Admon, and those who classify the halacha is what it means to say. Shnei Dvarim Shamar Hanan halacha kimosa kiyotzebo. In the two situations where Hanan said halachas, the halacha follows him, and those who classify like it. First of all, my halacha said, Shiva Dvarim Shamar Admon ein halacha kiyotzebo. So we'll say that the 7 cases where Admon brought down this halacha does not follow him. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, ein halacha kiyotzebo, the halacha doesn't follows those who quote him. Hakimoso, halacha b'kulu. It sounds like when it's just Admon by himself, that the halacha would follow him. But Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishra the Fiskah, we must understand in these cases there's two things that's happening like all these Mishnayos. There is Admon state in the halacha, and then you have like Rabbi Gamliel weighing in that the halacha follows Admon. That's the Kiyot Seder. We're now suggesting maybe there's a distinction between when Admon says the halacha himself versus when you have Rabbi Gamliel coming along and saying, oh, the halacha follows it. I, Bahamar Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishra the Fiskah. So I, but we just said before, whenever the Gamliel says, I see the words of Admon to be correct, that's the halacha follows. So the Gemara says, Amar in, well, Amar lo. It sounds like the halacha only follows Admon when Rabbi Gamliel voices his support. But if Rabbi Gamliel doesn't voice his support, then the halacha won't follow Admon. Halacha is what it means to say. Shnei dvarim she'amar Hanan halacha kimoseh kiyotzeho. That was always to say. In the two situations, the two things that Hanan said that the halacha fought. In the two cases where Hanan quoted the halacha, Kiyotzeho, others supported him, ultimately again halacha follows him. Shiva dvarim she'amar Admon yeshman shalacha kimoseh kiyotzeho, yeshman she'in halacha kimoseh ela kiyotzeho. The policy is but by Admon, there are some situations where halacha l'maisa the halacha will follow him. Other times that the halacha will only follow him when he's quoted in the name of others. So with Tombak of Shara Gamliel, Yohanes Tibur Admon, halacha kimoso inachon. I will say any place Rabbi Gamliel says that halacha follows Admon, halacha follows Admon, but not necessarily in the other pieces of Admon. So we'll say, so the Gemara is essentially just trying to go back and forth, trying to figure out who found the principle that could apply to the rulings of Admon and halacha. I will say, you're going to see the halacha l'maisa. There's no overarching principle. In fact, each of these cases are reckoned independently. We're going to see in this moment. So on this side, halacha l'maisa, let's close out this subject. How do we pass brothers? This is really a great case. Money's promised. What happened? Money's not paid. The only problem is at the time of default. What's the status of the marriage? The status of marriage? It's already been done. So now we have a problem. So you're saying, if you default before confusion fires, I mean, what? Don't get married. Everybody go home. That's it. The problem we have over here is the default happens after confusion before Nisur. Furthermore, two cases of default. What are the two cases of default? Case A, father default. Case B, brother, daughter, wife default. We'll say Machokis, Admon, Chachamim. Then there's a further Machokis, Mishnah, and the Brisa has to run the Machokis apart. So I'll say, here we go. Rama Baskins, Ochos Ishos, Parak of Gimel, Halacha Tes Zayin. I was saying, I was supposed to ask me a couple weeks ago why that is going to Rambam and not the Shulchan Aruch. So this is already going to the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch has been the same way. In general, the derech of the Rambam is that the Rambam's formulation of halacha is often much truer to the text of the Gemara. So if we're just trying to study halacha and myself from the Gemara, the lesson of the Rambam often adheres you to the sugya much more, whereas the Aruch already is a distilled version of the halacha. So again, the bottom line they say the same thing. Those are what the Rambam says. Here we go. Great case. Apostle goes the first now. So this is great. So here's how the Shulchan sets up the case. Right? So what happens? Rachel's going to marry Reuben. Rachel's father will call him Yaakov. Right? Rachel's father commits $10,000 to Rachel's husband, to Reuben. The halacha of the Medina of parents. The father relocates to another place. Sorry? Another place. Because like you hold the Himom the Baal, and either Pasaki Alas, Ma'an Yichol Lasos, O Kunos Kulon Gunda, O Patrain Bigat. So those says number one, we constantly like Adnan in the Mishnah. When it was the father who defaulted, Rachel says to her husband, listen, I give you either divorce me or marry me. Right? But don't keep me in the Mishnah. So they say that's halach and one like Amor the Mishnah. Aval, it must be alatzma, Beyada, Arezeh Yosheves, Ad Shetinsa Ma Shechaska or Ad Shechakas. So that's an interesting halach l'maisa. We do paskin like the chachamim in the Braisa's case. If she is the one who made the commitment, then ultimately she has to figure out a way to honor it, and he has no obligation to do anything until she figures out how to honor this commitment. Let's remember again. This is where she made the commitment. Remember, Admon's out for her. Remember again, what was Admon's out for her? What was his out for her? I didn't promise. I know it was me, and I'm an extension of my father, right? In other words, so when I say I promise you to be my father, so what I'm not asking is like the coming to the Bryce's case, namely that when she makes this commitment, Rachel herself makes the commitment to Ruben, and then defaults, Ruben can keep a holding pattern of Kiddush before she comes out with the money. And ultimately, again, doesn't have to either marry her or divorce her to the lady. Once again, this is the legal, moral, ethical. Should a man ever keep a woman in a relationship over money? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, if she says, give me more time, I'm happy to go and try to figure out how to do it. That's fine. She wants the time. But once again, this is the legal ruling, not the moral, ethical, or legal implication. So it says, halacha l'maisa, we pass like Admon in the Mishnah, therefore again, if father defaults, Ruben can't hold Rachel in a relationship. If Rachel defaults, he has the ability to go for all these parameters. Incredible. Mishnah, very interesting case. Okay, so let's go back up. Let's take a look at Rashi. First Rashi in the Mishnah. So let's say in the short lines of Rashi, 2, 4, 6, 7 lines into the short lines. Rashi says, watch this. This is fascinating. Ruben ma'arer al sada shebiyat at Shimon. So I say, so here's the case. Shimon has a field. Ruben is claiming it really belongs to me. It was stolen from me, and you bought it illegally. Now again, he's not accusing Shimon of being complicit in the death. He's just saying, Shimon, you think you're in the field, the field is really mine. Okay, fine. Now watch this. Ruben ma'arer al sada shebiyat Shimon. But Levi Shema doesn't mean that. Okay, so here's the case. Right? You've got Ruben, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is in current possession of a field that he bought from Levi. So Levi sold Shimon a field. Ruben says, Shimon, that field you have, it's my field. That's my field. Levi stole it from me and sold it to you. Okay, here's the wrinkle. The Mishnah says, Basara means that when Levi sold the field to Shimon, he wrote the document, and one of the witnesses on the bill of sale is Reuben. So Reuben is a witness. Reuben is a witness on the sale document from Levi to Shimon, and now Reuben, who's one of the witnesses, says to Shimon, Father, the field is stolen. So let's say, so now, I think this is like, wow, what's going on there exactly? Right, so Reuben is claiming, he says, Shimon, the field you got from Levi is stolen from me and sold it to you. And now you can put the paperwork and we see that Reuben himself is one of the witnesses on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. So what's that reference? Admon Omer. Admon says it's not a problem. You say to Reuben, so obviously that's Reuben, I understand. If the field, if Levi stole the field from you, then why would you agree to sign Shtar Mechira? Why would you agree to sell a bill of sale? Admon says there's a perfect answer for this. Sheni Noachli, Harisha Kasha. So let's listen to this, because Reuben can say, listen, Levi is a gangster, right? Levi is a thief, right? Levi is a strong guy. I knew I never had any chance of getting my kid back from Levi. Shimon and Levi, you're a reasonable guy. So I figured if I could get the field away from Levi to you, Shimon, now I have a better chance of getting back my stolen field. That's why I agreed to sign on the bill of sale so I can get it out of Levi's hands into your hands. Incredible. Also, brother, reality. So I'm just saying, like, this is so great. This is incredible. So let's now listen to this. The fun say, no, come on, cut it out. Even if we say, what are you talking about? Reuben, if you come forward with a claim that the field that Shimon currently has is stolen from you, that's fine. But when I say, once you're signing on to, once you're not a party, but once you're a witness to the transaction, you've lost any right to claim that this property belongs to you, even as a Kusa. So if you take Rashi, actually, even as Kusa, the whole of the Chasam, hold the shit in what is it? What is that? Essentially, what that comes is like this: the act of signing on a document, or the act of witnessing a document of sale transaction, is effectively saying what? This field has nothing to do with it. You're giving up any rights to the field. So here I say fundamental mathematics. On the flip side, I saw similar akar. Sorry, on the flip side, I saw similar akar. So let's say, look at this case. Look at Rashi. I saw a muhsab bar similar akar. Shalom machal ruben zeh ha'ora ala elo li'ish akar. Aya mochas sadam tzadju. U'mitzah le arba'os mitzari ha'sada. Possible the Mitzvah Mitzvah only Sadashim, but also Sadashim. Let's say I watch this case. So let's say for a moment that Ruben now owns the disputed field. Right? I'm sorry, Shimon, right? So Shimon owns the disputed field. So now what does Shimon do? Shimon sells another piece of property. Right? So let's say now let's call the disputed field A. Field A, right? So same case, right? Ruben bought the field from Shimon bought the field from Levi, right? Then there's Ruben. Ruben, of course, is claiming that Levi stole the field from him and now sold it to Ruben. Sold it to Shimon. I'm sorry. One more time, I'm going to get this right. Right, so let's say so again. Remember, Levi sells a field to Shimon. Right? In the back of all of this, you have Ruben claiming that Levi really sold that field to him. And now, all right, stole. That's how. Right? Levi sells the field to Shimon. Good, beautiful. Ruben now is claiming that the field that Shimon bought from Levi was stolen from him by Levi. Okay, so that was case one. And case one is where it turns out that Ruben himself is an aid on the bill of sale from Levi to Shimon. Okay, so now what do we do with that? So again, according to Admon, so Chachamim say that's it. Ruben, you lost any claim. You signed on the shtar. You lost any claim. Admon says no. There's still another claim. You can claim. Ruben can claim. It's easier for me to get the field back from Shimon than it was from Levi. Fine. Case two is Ruben. Sorry, Shimon is selling the field. Shimon's so let's call disputed field A. Shimon is selling field B. Field B. Fine, no problem. Shabbos said, often the way when you would sell a field, if there was a field that was next to other fields, the way you would identify the field that you were selling is by identifying the other fields all around it, right? I'm selling you field B that is bordered by fields A, D, E. So in this case over here, Shimon is selling field B. But in the document of sale, he makes reference, he says field B borders on my other field, field A. Field A. So in this case, field A is being used as a demarcation point, as a border. So right, field A, this field is not being sold at all. But it's being used to identify field B, which is the transaction. So now Ruben is using field A, right? Sorry, Shimon, thank you. Shimon is using field A as just to identify the border of the field that is being sold. Now they say Ruben signing on this document first. Ruben signing on this document. So now here's the Sharma. Now in this transaction, in this document, so when Shimon is selling field B, selling field B, he's also what? So to speak, solidifying his ownership over field A because he's using field A to identify one of the borders of field B. Ruben is claiming that this field A, because originally is signing on this document. So now, now what's going to happen? Then after this is over, so now Reuben is going to want to come back and say to Shimon, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi who subsequently sold it to you. The Mishnah says no. Saw Simon La'achar, eBay Nesifusa. At the end of the day, even Admon agrees, which is interesting. Even Admon agrees in this case, that once Reuben signed on this type of star, which used the contested field as a border for the field being sold, everyone agrees that Reuben has relinquished any further rights to claim that the field is his. Okay, interesting. Let's go. I'm Rabbi. Okay, let's go back to that first case. Great. Let's go back to the first case. That's enough. Okay, it's good. No, so, no, but the truth is, I realize that this we actually have to stay on target because the truth is, Kodesh is Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So the truth is, Tuesday and Wednesdays down there are a little bit, and Monday, a little bit long. So we gotta stay, and we only have 45 minutes on Tuesday. So, but we're gonna be fine. So here we go. We'll say so. I'm not biases. We'll say now we're focusing on case number. So once again, let's just get back to case number one. Right? Shimon purchases a field from Levi. There's a document, right? And the document that says that Levi sold the field to Shimon. One of the witnesses is Reuben. Reuben then comes after the sale is complete, and Reuben comes to Shimon and says, Shimon, the field is mine, and Levi stole it from me. What? And then the document. So again, Chachamim say, sorry, Reuben, you no longer have any claim because Halakha Mesa, you signed on the document. Sorry, you're a witness. We're done. Admin says no. Reuben has a claim. Yes, I signed the document in order to get it out of Levi's hands. Your hands shouldn't be felt, and I have a better chance with you of getting back my life. Fine. So now Rabbi says, Lo Shano Ella 8. That's only true. Like all of this is only true. If Halakha Mesa, Reuben signed the Machlokas, is only if Reuben signed as a witness. About Gayon, Lo Reuben has this is fascinating. So let's say if this is really incredible. So if Halakha Mesa, Reuben served as a Gayon, as a judge, everyone agrees that he could still make the claim of fact, even though he was the judge over it. What is that? Why do you need a judge in this case? Look at Rashi about Gayon. Shehuvish down the three days in the timer, Mishpat Kiyum Shtaris, Sha'idim Boy in Ibrak Sabyadam, Dayanim Kosin Shtara Dinan Nafta the Kabana, Basidio Sadia Hasmir Zarab. So say, watch this. Let's say again they come to Beis Din to certify documents. Kiyum Shtaris. We've spoken about certification of documents again. What is Kiyum Shtaris? The danger of documents. And one of them, halacha, document, right? You never sign shtar. So that's incredible. The problem is somebody go ahead and forge, right? Did you forge a shtar? Sure. So there's a concept of shtar certification. We call it kiyum shtaris. What's the concept of kiyum shtaris? You bring your shtar to Beis Din, right? The Beis Din takes a look at it. The Beis Din brings in testimony, or brings in the witnesses, certify that is there, that is their signature. You write a little pen pick, right? You write a little either on the document itself or an attached document, and done. The shtar is certified. So the list is incredible. So that is just like this. The Machlokas Almon and the Chachamim in the first case of this is only the reading sign as a witness of the transaction. And he is a client on the Beis Din that certified the document that does not erode his ability to later on claim that the field was stolen from him. Why, Rabbi say? This is actually fascinating. We tell you that the field ain't ha'ekin chosin ala shtar ela im karu. Aval on the base, Aval hadayonu chosin ata fish shalom karu. We'll say actually it's incredible. When you witness a transaction, right? When you sign as an aide, we'll say, what are you signing on? You're signing on the validity of the transaction. Like that's what you're signing on. That I witness this transaction. This transaction is binding, valid, and legal. When you're a dayan for kiyum shtaris, they will say, what are you certifying? What are you certifying? Signatures. You are not certifying the transaction. In fact, the dayan, sometimes like kiyum shtaris, the dayanim aren't even reading what's in the documents. Like, because I'm not certifying the transaction. I have no idea about the transaction. Kiyum shtaris is there just simply to certify the signatures on the document itself. But it has nothing to do with it. It's so fascinating. So fascinating. So you could have a situation like Kiyum shtaris, which makes sense, I would say, because otherwise, the Kiyum shtaris requires a whole certification of the transaction. And what's the point of the shtar? And what does the shtar do? The shtar, right? The agents on the shtar locks in the transaction. Kiyum shtar certifies the signature. So this is incredible. So we'll say in a case where Reuben was a dying for Kiyum shtar. So now let's play this out, right? So Levi sells a field to Shimon, and they're about to draw a document, and now they want to bring the document to Beis Din for certification. Reuben is one of the dayanim on the Beis Din to certify. Right, Reuben's Beis Din certifies the document, and then after it's certified, Reuben says to Shimon, by the way, the field is stolen from me. Everyone agrees in that case. Reuben has a valid claim. That's a valid. We see Reuben has a valid claim. Obviously, saying something was stolen from you is not a claim. Right? I mean, it's a claim. What it means is Reuben now has the right to what? Pursue that claim. Right? So again, why? And everyone agrees in that case. Everyone agrees in that case. Why? Because Reuben's acting with Shaddai for Kiyum shtaris has nothing to do with the transaction. All Reuben was just saying, oh yeah, the signatures, we can say we can speak, you guys recognize the signatures, fantastic. Good, sign it up, right? And then we're done. Certified, we're done. So everyone agrees in that case that in no way erodes his claim to go ahead and pursue the stolen, right, the stolen claim. The claim that was stolen from him. Now, Sha'in came, then he's a witness to the actual transaction, sale from Levi to Shimon. In that case, again, part of signing on a shtar is what? You are claiming the transaction itself is valid. When you say claim the transaction is valid, you can't go ahead and now claim that same parcel is stolen from you. Admon says, yes, I can. The transaction was valid. In other words, yes, Levi sold to Shimon. At the end of the day, it's my own. Good. I saw a similar answer. Especially the next case the Mishnah was, that I remember again. Right? So same case, but let's say, not same case. In this case, Shimon the purchaser, or Shimon the purchase confessed the property with all parcel A. Shimon is selling parcel B and uses parcel A to identify the borders of parcel B. Reuben himself signs on that shtar as well, not as well, but Reuben sells on that shtar. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that after he sells on that shtar, he no longer has the right to pursue anything that belongs to him. Parcel is for him. Not that way. That's only true ultimately. Again, Rashi says, similarly as Moshe, Reuben said, listen to this. That's only true when what? When Shimon is selling the parcel to someone else. What happens if Shimon is selling the parcel to Reuben himself? Shimon is selling parcel B to Reuben. And now happens to be in that sale, Shimon uses parcel A, that's the property, as a border identification. But ultimately, in that case, even though Reuben, right, even as simply says, Reuben did not go ahead and lose out on his ability to reclaim parcel A. Why? The Amar, Idala of delay, as he said, I would not agree to this. They'll have a masculine with you. But ultimately, again, Shimon would not sell me the property. In other words, what they say, the concern over here is that if Shimon knows that Reuben is going to be claiming parcel A, he's going to be reticent to what? Sell a parcel B. So Shimon wants to buy parcel B. By logic, I can point now, so when I say I'm not going to get parcel B, certainly again, leaving aside parcel A, so the Gemara says, "Not use the color." So what could Reuben have done? We probably remain on their God. So maybe what they could have done is that before he purchases parcel B from Shimon, other side of this, so I'll tell you guys. parcel B from Shimon. In a transaction, Shimon is saying that parcel B, right, borders on Shimon's other parcel, parcel A. Guys, I just want to tell you, you basically saying like a sidebar. I'll tell you guys, Shimon also is still not saying anything else. He's going to let them transaction. Maybe that's what you should say. Make him a God, not God. Right? Let him go. So says, yeah, that'll help really well. Chavra is like, Chavra is like. This is good, but your friend has a friend. Friend of your friend has a friend. Which I will say is another way of saying, don't rely on anyone's confidentiality. Right? So the nice again, if you says something sort of in confidence to the witnesses, they're going to say something, and what's going to happen? It's going to cause the whole transaction about possibly the whole jeopardy. But you know, there's as follows. So, how the cover is like, Hahu Dasa similar Achas. So, in this case, so the piece over here is, so let's go back. So, let's like, so this is just a unique. So remember, let's go back. The Mishnah said that in a case where Ruvain is now signs on a shtar, that is a witness to a document, where Shimon is selling parcel B to another party, but in parcel B, he's using parcel A, the contested parcel, as one of the borders. And Ruvain signs on that document. Ruvain gives up his record to any more claimed parcel A. That's only true. Now Abai gives a qualification. That's true if Shimon was selling it to another party. But if Shimon was selling it to Ruvain himself, so Ruvain doesn't object to the use of parcel A as a border, that's because Ruvain doesn't want to fall into jeopardy. But the whole transaction. Fine. So it's another to the original case. Who does something now? So let's go back to the Mishnah's original case. So it's the Mishnah's original case. So I'm not going to say now. So Ruvain is paid on the shtar where Shimon is selling parcel B using parcel A as a border. So what happens? Here are the shepherds. So after the transaction happens, now what happens? So Ruvain comes, by the way, parcel A is mine. Parcel A is mine. But what happens? Shepherd, then he dies. Ruvain died. Right, so Ruvain died. This is curious, right? Right, Ruvain died after raising the objection to the ownership of parcel A. Okay. What happens? The opening of the truck. Let's say so now again. So after Ruvain passed away, right? Either Ruvain made provisions for this beforehand, or the Basin appointed an apotropos. Now there's an executor of Ruvain's estate. Okay. So Asa apotropos coming that evaluate. So the apotropos came before evaluate. Amalei saw similar. So this is now what happens. The apotropos is coming. Or why is he coming? The apotropos is saying, listen, before Ruvain died, Ruvain claimed that Gil A belonged to him. So the apotropos says, I am coming to follow up on that claim. I'm coming to follow up on that claim. Okay, so why is he listen? Why is he no claim? Listen, Krishna. Amalei saw similar. Even as we already learned this case. Ruvain signed onto this document where Shimon used field A as a border identification for field B. And the Mishnah says once you do that, you go out and relinquish all of your rights. Nothing more to talk about. To which the apotropos says you're right, but Amar Hava Avason Yasmikayim Avatayim Amar Halam Afarasis. Very interesting. So I will say, so the apotropos says, if Ruvain was still alive, what Ruvain would say is yes. I agree that I signed on a document where Ruvain used field A as a border for field B. It's really the only thing I was agreeing to was that perhaps Shimon owns a narrow strip of field A. A narrow strip of field A. That's what he owned. That's what he owned. So he goes, anyway, Shabir Ha'amet. So the truth is that's a good point. Rabbi Rothschild, so it's actually very interesting. That the claim over here is that halacha l'maisa, right? That if I go ahead, Rabbi Rothschild says, let's say I sold you a field, right? I the field is mine, and the only thing I sold you in that field was the narrow strip, such a claim could actually be believed. So the Gemara said, see what's happening over here? In other words, Reuben signed on this document that where Shimon was selling a field to another party, Shimon was selling field B, and field B was sold with a order identification of field A. Reuben signed on it. After Reuben signed on it, the transaction happened. Reuben said, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi. After that, Reuben dies. Apotropos comes along and says, tries to sell me up the affairs of the state, he comes to a buyer, and the Apotropos, listen, Reuben claimed this thing. Field this is. Abai says that's fine. Field this is. Ben says that's fine, but it's a Mishnah. Right? Reuben signed on that document. He signed that document using field A as a border to field B. The applicant all rights to the field. To which the Apotropos says, no, perhaps if he was here, would claim all Shimon really owned in that field was just a narrow strip. That's what he was identifying as the border. To which Abai says that's a good argument. God see a hard relating us, ultimately again, which still should have to go ahead. So in other words, now Abai says the Apotropos, even if that's a good claim, so that's fine, but you still have to leave in Shimon's possession a narrow strip. So listen, here's the problem. On that narrow strip, there was a line of countries. Made that narrow border strip pretty valuable. So the Gemara says. So anyway, you have a this is great. Yeah, by the way. Rabbi Rothschild says, if Reuben was alive, he could claim, while it's true that I sold that border strip back to Shimon, I then subsequently repurchased it. Abai says, the truth is, I really shocked her comment. Saying, good. Then Rabbi Yochanan, in Tom, the Amr Chazak, so they're saying, ultimately, again, Reuben was the claim, I sold it, and I repurchased it with belief. And they'll say, the reason that is because this is what she says, Pesha Asa, Pesha Hitya. And those will say, the king said, look around, here's the case, just to get the case in its totality. Naaman, that Pesha Asa, Pesha Hitya, the Me'acher Shish, Eden Shaisa Shelo, so they'll say, the king said here is where, remember, Shimon sold the field, Levi sold the field to Shimon. Reuben, and then again, it gets more complicated. But now what happens? So now you have Reuben, then you have Shimon, together. Here we go. You have Levi selling the field to Shimon. Field A. Okay, fine. Now what happens? Shimon sells field B to another party. But in that transaction, he uses field A as a border identification. Reuben signs on that shtal, that bill of sale that Shimon makes to the party of field B. Afterwards, what happens? Shimon, so Reuben says, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi and is sold to you, Shimon. So remember again, strict halacha in the Mishnah is we don't believe Reuben. You sign on that document, we don't believe you. But I said, in this case, it's becoming a little bit more complicated. In this case, what happens is, Reuben goes ahead and claims the field is stolen. Not only that, Reuben brings witnesses. He brings witnesses. That's showing the better for the rest. He brings witnesses. Now we'll say, after he goes in and brings witnesses, what happens? He dies. Okay, now what happens? Apotropos comes to a buyer. Apotropos says, listen, I'm here to help him with his claims. Abai says, there is no claim. It's a Mishnah. Reuben signed on the document. Apotropos says that he has Aedis. Abai says his bonus after. Essentially, the Aedis is negated in the face of what? Reuben's signature. In other words, once Reuben signs on that document, he effectively signs away his rights. Which the Apotropos says, anyway. What you understand is he actually went ahead and sold back. Right? He sold to Shimon a strip of land. Okay. So now what you're telling me is when Reuben signed the document, he wasn't yielding his rights to the rest of the field. What was he acknowledging? that Shimon owns a strip of land of field A that borders on field B, but that in no way is yielding his rights to the rest of field A. That's good. But Abai says, okay, that's fine, so you can pursue your claim on the rest of field A. But what? But what? But you have to go ahead and at least leave in Shimon's possession what? The strip of land. To which Abatropa says, but 1 second, there's more to the story. Reuven bought back the strip of land from Shimon. He bought it back. To which Abai says, which is very so good, why? Because this is the passion, also a question of why. Because the only way we knew about the sale was how? Was through Reuven. Right? You know, right through Reuven. We didn't know about the sale. Without the sale, all you would have is what? This tape was saying that the mice in the field was stolen from Reuven. So now Reuven, so to speak, his apotropos is telling us that a sale happened of the strip. Now Reuven is further qualifying and telling us after the sale occurred, Reuven bought it back from Shimon. It's a pesha, also pesha in which case Reuven slash the apotropos should be believed. It turns away that Reuven, it turns out that Reuven should really walk the field with it. As soon as he could prove his claim, that he should really be able to walk with the field in its entirety, including the strip of palm trees. Incredible. Amar Abai also wants to take away from the story. Abai, I man to mocha apotropa, no ki an yagala that is supposed to be asking. Also, the entire takeaway is you got to get an apotropos like this, right? There, I say this is you gotta surround yourself with good people, right? This apotropos Abai says knew exactly what he was doing. Good. So I will say, so for our purposes, Allah for myself. Henry causes. I will say this is a complicated case. It is a very complicated case. Remember again, we'll say what we have essentially embedded in this case is a couple of different cases. Just because I'm just going to tell you quickly. Rambam Paskin, this is an Hilchos Tolein Hidnitam, Perek Tes Zayin, Halachas Aleph and Beis. We're not going to have time for everything. I'm going to leave out the Chalon case. I'm just going to give you the Mishnah. Here it is. Reuven Shemach on the Shimon Saga. Reuven sold the field to Shimon. Bahaya Levi, okay, so now I'm changing the name. So I'm going to keep it like we have it, right? So let's say, so Levi sold the field to Shimon, and Reuven was one of the witnesses on the shtar. And what happens? Subsequently, right? Reuven claims after the transaction occurs. Reuven claims that what? That Allah Kalamaisa, Levi stole it from me. Ain Shimon. But I'm not asking like the function. No. Even though I remember again, you're going to claim, yes, I signed on it because I wanted it to go from Levi to Shimon because I feel about transferring my field back from Shimon and from Levi. But Rambam says, okay, so it's clear. Allah for myself, right? Allah for myself. There's absolutely nothing to talk about once you are party to the transaction. Like once you are a witness on that shtar, you have effectively ceded and yielded any rights that you would have to that field as your own. However, the Rambam says, if Reuven acted as a dyer to shtaris, he does not yield or cede any future rights. Again, going back to the distinction of the Gemara. But Allah for myself, an aid certifies the transaction. A dyer only certifies the signature. So they will say, Allah for myself, we don't cross like Admon in this Mishnah, we cross like that. There's more, much more. Again, Hilchos telling Nitan, Perek Kazayin, Halachas, Aleph, and Beis. Take a look at it as your own, a lot more interesting than it is, but that's the halacha of the good. Mishnah, quickly. Mishnah, the Derech Sadeh. Say, okay, it just gets better. Listen to this case. Everyone say, by the way, you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Ksubas? So first of all, it's so good, so who cares? Right, that's answer number one. That's answer number one. So remember again, the reason, just so you know, in all seriousness, the reason why we're doing this is because remember, the way this parak started off were with the rulings of Admon and Hanan. And remember again, it started off with a discussion about Mizonos, that's which is Ksubas. Now I will say we're just going through all of their rulings. Watch, this is a great case. Misha, Allah from the Dina says, we'll say, watch this case. Reuven goes overseas. Now Reuven owns a field. Now we'll say, interestingly enough, the case over here is Reuven's field is landlocked, which means that the only way he was ever able to Getting to this house, he had a right of way. He had a right of way with someone. So what happened? So Misha so we'll say, so now what's the problem? He comes back, he's been away for a while. He can't remember the right of way. Where is my right of way to get into my field? And of course, as one can imagine, none of the neighbors are being forthcoming. Right? No, because obviously no one wants to give up that. No one wants to give up that one. So Admon Omar, Yelech Lo Tzara. Admon says, look, since we have to use logic, figure out what is the shortest way to get into this field, and let's assume that was the previously established right of way. The Chum say no. You have a choice. You have a choice. Either go ahead and pay $5, whoever's willing to negotiate with you, or fly. Or fly. Right? In other words, right, okay, right, or fly. Figure out a way to fly. So again, this is actually interesting. Come say, listen, Ruben, you went overseas, you lost your information. The burden is on you. So pretty much, again, no one has to do anything for you. So you're going to have to figure out a way to negotiate the $5 rite of passage. Let's analyze. So my time in the Rabbanon, shopping got on. So I don't understand. What's the logic of the Rabbanon? It's able to say the reason why the Rabbanon's position doesn't seem to make sense is if there's one thing we know, it's that what? It's that what? Ruben had a right of way. He had a right of way. Right? I'll tell you, it's the right of way. Even today, I know this without building, the right of way agreements are like you would think it should be the simplest part of a real estate transaction. It's incredible how complicated right of way agreements are. It's fascinating. In any event, so the says, as far as I understand, obviously he has a right of way. This was his field. He used the field. He was getting in and out of his field, so there was a right of way agreement. So Admon is saying, listen, logically, he's going to take in the easiest path. So just assume that's the path he had. What's logical for that? All right, you know, watch this. You don't shiki plus. I gave it away a little bit. I'm sorry. Shiki plus. I gave it away. In other words, this is a landlocked field. There's 4 different people. So I'll say, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is, if you can imagine, right, you leave this bag, everyone says Shalom Aleichem, they make Kiddush, it's so beautiful. And then he goes to neighbor number 1. Was mine right of way through here? No, not here. Right, neighbor 2, no, not here either. 3, 4. So we'll say, the problem is, each has the ability to deflect it to the other. So this is one of these interesting cases where we know a right of way exists, but Ruben can't figure out a way to enforce it against any one particular party. If that's the case, then again, why does Admon say that Ruben could seemingly seize the shortest right of way? So Amarava, very quickly, Ba'arba the Asimikah Arba. So Ba'arba the Asimikah had Kuli Amalek Ligi Matzimatki. So what's this? When you have 4 people who bought their own respective fields from 4 other people, or for that matter, 4 people who bought their fields from 1 person. Everyone agrees in that case, each party can deflect to someone else. Keeply, Gemara says, so Keeply, where does not like this one? Let's listen to this. The Chad, the Asim Arba. So watch this. Let's say now all 4 fields, all 4 of the landlocked fields, or the landlocked fields, are all owned by 1 person. Right? So you've got Reuben in the middle, and all 4 of the surrounding fields are owned by 1 person. Rabbi say what? Bought it from 4 individual owners. So in this case over here, we'll call him Shimon. Shimon now owns the 4 fields which surround Reuben's field, but Shimon bought it from 4 independent people. Watch this. So Admon Savar Mikamach and Daka is Legava. So Admon says, listen, Reuben can go up to Shimon. Give me a right of way. You know that I own a right of way. You can figure out where, but you own, I own it, so give it to me. Goes in this. Rabbanon say, listen to this. Shimon can say to Reuben like this. Shatak. If you're going to be quiet, be quiet. If you're going to make problems for me, so it says this. Shimon can say to Reuben, here's the deal. If you want to negotiate, you negotiate. If you're going to make problems, I'm going to return the land to the previous 4 owners. It's going to be owned by 4 independent people, and therefore, what can I say? Reuben, you'll never be able to get your right of way. Why? Because each of them can deflect you to the other. So if you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. But if you're going to claim Magiali, right, something's owed to me, I'll simply go ahead and return the land, and then you'll be stuck forever. Incredible. So the Gemara says, so I'm sorry. Who Damalu? Tell us quickly. Finish off the sugya. Who Damalu? A guy says, Who Damalu? Tikla libras. So listen to this. A guy, Ruben, is about to die. Right before he dies, he says, I want my daughter to inherit the palm tree. He's giving a palm tree to his daughter. Azal Yasmi plugged in the say, so Ruben dies, and the sons went ahead and divided up the estate, but didn't give the palm tree to the daughter. Rabbi Yosef wanted to say the Maisa, and this is the Mishnah. Why recognize the donor wants to go ahead and come to get the palm tree, right? And each son could say what? Each one could say what? No, not from my portion, from his portion, from his horse, from his portion. I'm going to buy you meat. It's not a good comparison. So listen to this. Here's the difference. So in the case of the right of way really only does exist on one field. When it comes to the daughter's right to a palm tree, that is a right that devolves upon all of their inheritance portions. So therefore, my takanasai, what should we do? What they should do is give her a palm tree, and then divide the estate minus the palm tree. That's what should happen. Okay, we'll say very quickly. I'm sorry, just give me a little one more minute. We're going to stop. Tikla Lebras. Actually, I will say we'll stop over here for today. We'll just pick up with this very last piece of message. I tried. Okay. I'll say Shkoyach. Again, great week ahead of us. Emir Hashem. Shkoyach. All right. Have another good day, everyone. All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin. Hashem, a great visit was to enter into our last week of the Sefas Ksubas. I want to go ahead and begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei. To thank Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah and Ricky Grants, Julia, Rena, and Eve. Loving them, dedicating the short this month, loving memory of their husband, father, and leader, Dr. Paul Weinberg, Eretz Moshe Ben Avram David. Thank Ayala says, time of dedicating the shiur this month in the space of Rafur Shalita, or Shulamis Bas Susha, and an animal who beat by Zeb in the space of all of our fields in the Scotland and Hashem, and the Florida sponsors. Avram Zeisman, devotion of the Isaac and his grandmother, and his grandfather, Avraham Ben Aaron, and Tzvi and Shem Shear, in honor of Kiva and Elliot Shmuel and Shira Pepper, in honor of Ari Lerner and all the girls from the school. Incredible, beautiful. I would like to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today. Alan and Andrea Stowis, in honor of the Bas Mitzvah of their granddaughter, Kila Rosenblum, will she grow the Torah and mitzvahs in Moshnachas to her entire family and all of the families. Beautiful, beautiful. We'll see with that, let us begin very, very excited. First of all, very exciting Gemara in general, and also to recognize it. It's always beautiful when there's like this confluence of events. We're finishing in the Sefta on Rosh Chodesh, so we're ending things, beginning things, closing out Chodesh Tishrei, beginning Teshvan, and Eretz Hashem is such excitement that we're in the Sefta. We'll say let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Tes 109. We are picking up in Eretz Hashem on the bottom of Kuf Tes days 108b. 108b. We really left off. We left off yesterday at the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows: a posek ma'os the chasna. It's a very interesting case. Someone promises money to his son-in-law. An age-old story, right? So someone promises money to his son-in-law. Rabbi said in this particular case, what's unfolding over here is like this. Essentially, we're talking about a dowry. So imagine for a moment that Reuben is marrying Rachel. Rachel's father promises Reuben some amount of money. And what happens? Pasha was, however, and then the father-in-law extends his foot. So also, what does it mean extends his foot? So again, extends his foot means the father-in-law doesn't pay. So Rachel's father doesn't pay the dowry. Now look at actually, Pasha does, however. Russian Zion Amar Noach Sheinu Chashbul Dvarav Tol Tit Sha'al Davi Ragu. This Talmudic expression of extending your foot. Essentially, I'm giving you nothing. Take the dirt that's on my shoe. Take the dirt. Now, in general, what this sounds like is the father-in-law is intentionally not giving his son-in-law the money. But the truth is, the case doesn't have to be set up that way. That's just the way that's what the Mishnah is saying. So, Poshelo is Rago here. Take the dirt that's on my foot. I'm not giving you the money. The point over here is father-in-law promised money and now is not delivering. So let's say now the problem we're in is what Kiddushin has already taken place. So Reuben was already Mekadesh Rachel. The Surin has not yet been done. Father-in-law indicates that whatever the situation is, he will not pay the money. Once the halacha type of profess, he should actually have been Rosha. Come and say, ultimately, again, literally, she has to sit there until her heart goes gray, which means she's stuck. Rachel's stuck. That, in other words, at this point in time, the control is in Reuben's hands, and either he can make a choice to marry her, right, or ultimately just wait and do nothing until her father pays her. After all, again, there was an agreement that was made. Rachel's father is not honoring the agreement. So again, moving the law to a holding pattern of those other what is the issue. Admon says, the holding issue of Rachel should say to Reuben, so Admon says like this. Rachel could say to Reuben, listen, I, Rachel, was the one who promised you money. If I was the one who promised you money, then you can hold it over my head. So if you can hold it over my head, then you can essentially, hold me in this marriage until either I pay you or until I pay you. And again, Achshav, Abakasak, Bani the Polonasos, Okinos, Okibon. So she said, what do you want from me now? So hold me accountable, punish me for my father's actions. So Reuben, you can marry me slightly soon, or divorce me. So they'll say, so I'm representing no, I need to down. Daniel says, I think I'm on this point. So the Bible says, fundamental focus. Once again, just to reframe the case. So Rachel's going to get married to Reuben. Rachel's father promises Reuben $10,000. Like that's the agreement, that's the doubt. Plus Kiddushin. Now, father-in-law says, I'm not giving you, I can't pay you, I won't give you, whatever it is. The point is, he's not giving. So now, Chachamim say, Reuben has every right to essentially hold Rachel in this marriage until her father decides to pay. And ultimately, if he doesn't pay, so then Rachel's going to grow old in a state of Kiddushin. Admon says, that's not right. It's not right. Ultimately, again, I'm also about it, even the Chachamim are not necessarily saying it's right. The Chachamim are just saying it's legal. This is technically a legal request that we as he forces his father-in-law's hand. So Rachel says Admon says that Rachel can say to her cousin, that's not right. I didn't enter into this agreement with you. My father did. Why are you punishing me for the default of my father? Listen, don't keep me in limbo. Either marry me or divorce me. Rachel and Zakai, I think Allah follows Adam. Let's go. So now speaking to Loki Aitara. Mishnah is not perfected view of the fire in time. As a which we don't know about so fascinating is the Sanya, I'm Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda, knowing that with the Amir the Kamil Allah, Joseph knows the Fasna. The Kashat was Haragal, she only Kisha Kamar Abba Hasak Alai, Ma Ani Yola Lasos. So that's very interesting. A different twist over here. In this price, I'm quoting the same case. But in this case, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda posits that everyone agrees in a case where the father defaulted on the agreement he made that Reuben can't hold Rachel hostage in this marriage. That Rachel has every right to say, I didn't default, either marry me or divorce me, but don't keep me in this state. Sa'ama Mechri. So learn as a focus, Chachamim and Amon. Asher Koske he alasma. I will say in the Bryce's version, in the father defaulted, everyone agrees that Reuben can't hold Rachel. Everyone is going to agree that on a conceptual level, a man should never hold his wife in a marriage. That's never something that Chazal wants. Why is the purpose creating the system of peace in a way which seems to give the husband much more power, power. Anyway, that's a question that we're going to ask. I have to ask the talk about question. And the Navi will come. They will explain to us why the halachas of seem to really be heavily slanted to give the man the power. But again, this is a legal discussion. So legal discussions sometimes do not enter into the arena of what is right? We all know this. That we teach this to our kids. Just because something is mutter, right? Just because it's permissible does not mean it should be done. So again, we're talking about what's permissible, right? So if we come and say again, it's permissible for him to use the marriage as leverage to go ahead and extract money from his father. It's legal. It's legal. Is it right? Is it right? It's not right. Of course it's not right. It's just important to understand that. Which I know everyone does, but sometimes it's just like, as you get older, especially, you learn that even when everyone knows something, it's still important to say. And I also got this extends, really, business that desire for marriage, that should never ever be used as leverage. That should never be used as a mechanism, as a tool to extract something that a husband. Right? It's not what Chazal, it's not what Baruch wants, it's not what Chazal wants. And the truth is, nothing good ever comes from hurting another human being, and nothing good ever comes by using halacha as a means of expression. Okay, but back to our so again, the Maisa, Brisa has a different view on this, right? So in the Brisa's version, that the Chachamim and Admon both agree that what, but I looked at the Maisa, where it was the father who made the financial arrangement with Reuven, and now the father divorced, or again, default doesn't pay whatever it is. So everyone agrees from the Rizal that I love for myself. Rachel says to Reuven, you're marrying your person, but you cannot keep in this. So what's the focus? What's the focus? What happens if Rachel promised Reuven money? Right, so before the kiddushin, Rachel says to Reuven, listen, you mekadosh me, and if you're mekadosh me, I'm going to give you $10,000. Okay, so now what happens? Reuven is mekadosh Rachel, and then what happens? Rachel doesn't pay. Won't pay, can't pay, doesn't pay. So let's say, so now watch this. Shacham becomes say to Yeshua Ashikal ben Rosha. Shacham say, listen, Rachel, you're a promise. So I need to commitment. Reuven is not familiar with you soon with you until you figure this out. So you can go into a holding pattern over here until you, Rachel, figure out how to satisfy the obligation you entered into. Admon Omar, Admon says, Yecholi Shekomar, just listen to this, it's like, Admon says, so what can she say in this case? This is great. Yecholi Shekomar, Kisura Ani Sha'abono say. She says, no. If I said, I'm going to give you $10,000, I figured the same bank that has been bankrolling my life up until this point in time, right? It's incredible. No credit limits, right? No pre-qualifications, nothing. I figured the same bank that was taking care of me my entire life is going to take care of me now. So she said, I know I said that I was going to pay you. But again, I automatically assumed that it was my father who was going to go ahead and pay for this nidinga. Ba'akshav she'in avanosing alai ma'an yichol lasos okinos okdor. So she says, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? I guess, in other words, what Rothschild says, I'm not purposely being difficult over here. I never had the money to back up this promise, right? I never had the money to back up the promise. It was always going to be my father. Now my father doesn't want to pay. Okay, don't hold me hostage in this relationship. Either marry me or divorce me. So I just want to point out over here. So the Gemara is now explaining that there's two versions of this machlokes. In our Mishnah's version, right, the machlokes case is where the father of the bride, the father of Rachel, promised and then doesn't pay. Chachamim say, okay, Reuben can wait. Reuben can do like Reuben go for a holy pattern until the shver pays up. Right? Admon says she could say to him, "This is not my fault. That's my fault. Either divorce me or marry me, but don't go and keep me in this baby's food." Like Rice now says, no. In that case, where the father defaults, everyone agrees that Rachel could tell Reuben either divorce me or marry me, because I didn't give you. What's the matter in this case? The Rachel promises the money. So the Chachamim say, listen, Rachel, you made a promise. Make good on the promise. If you don't make good on the promise, Reuben has no obligation towards you. You go into a holding pattern. Admon says, no. When Rachel says, I made the promise, I was giving my father. I was relying on my father. So ultimately, don't hold it against me. You can marry me or divorce me. Incredible. I don't know what Rabbi says, and if I was saying the Baisa also, Rabbi Rothschild and is to the Admon. Again, in the Baisa, you have Rabbi Rothschild agreeing with Admon. So Tana, let's analyze this. When is this so? Says the Gemara. I'm not perfect. Let's say when is all of this said, right? I'm exclusively the Baisa, and we came on the adult girl. But with a Kitano, with a minor, we will force him, force him. So Gemara says, force who to do what? If ultimately at the end of the day we come out forcing the father to pay off, so they'll say it makes much more sense to force the father in a case of the Gedola than it does to force him in a case of the Kitana. Why? Because we're talking about a case where the Kitana promised money. Right? Rachel is promised money to Reuben. Let's get a laugh at that promise. Not there. Right? Where does it kind of mean this? So if you're going to be talking about a case where you're forcing the father to pay out, it makes more sense to force the father to pay up than a case where the Gedola brother made a commitment. So the Gemara says, they're playing by the way. Ella Amarava hoping the Baal and the Rabbi says, no. What it means is we force the husband to give it back. So it's like, I love when I said, talking about a case of the Kitana. So because you went to the Kitana, and the commitment of the Kitana, ultimately they're going to not find you. Therefore, I love when I say, a case of the Kitana, we force the husband to give it back. We'll see how that plays out in the Rambam, which is a little bit. I don't know if you can relate to this here. Come back, and so let's finish this. As we go back to the Rambam. So listen to this. So Amar Yitzchak ben Allah so Moshe the Fiskas. Come up and say Gamil Yo and is to the Admon. So we're going to say now we're going back to the Mishnah. Any time that you find that what the Gamil says, right? Any place you find that the Gamil says Allah follows Admon, Allah follows him. Allah will be follows him. Only Rabbi Rothschild. You look at the Isa. That should be in the Isa just the Mishnah. In other words, now we're saying whenever the Gamil says that Allah follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. So is that true just for the Mishnah and the Bais as well? Are they meet coming on the Mishnah? Did I say just in the Mishnah? Listen to what I'm saying. I said any place means what? A Mishnah or a Brisa. Any time that the Gemara says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon. Incredible. Based on halacha, right? Ultimately, so listen to this. Now, the serious thing in the two situations, ultimately again, where based on Shamar Hanan Kiyotzebo, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that Allah Kabbalas Hanan, Allah Kabbalas Hanan, Shiva Dam Shamar Admo in Allah Kiyotzebo. But ultimately again, the 7 cases where Admon said the halacha, and Rabbi Gamliel said that the halacha is like Admon, the halacha does not follow Admon. So that's what does this mean? Even Rahi Hanan, Shnei Dam Shamar Hanan halacha Kimoso Kiyotzebo. So maybe things like this: the two halachas that Hanan brought down, and ultimately again, Yosef, those who classify like Hanan, halacha follows them. The Shiva Dharm Shana Admon in halacha Yosef, and like Yosef, the 7 cases that are brought them in the name of Admon, the halacha neither follows Admon, nor like the ones who classify like Admon. I don't Yitzchak ben Allah to Mishmut Kiskiya. Rabbi Shemar Rabbi Gamliel Ron as Divrei Admon Allah. So we just said before that any time that Rabbi Gamliel said, I see the words of Admon to be correct, that's halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, and halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel, Admon, and those who classify. We try to have what Isaiah needs to say. Shnei Dvarim Sha'amar Hanan halacha K'mos Kiyotzebo. So the two situations where Hanan said, halacha follows him, and those who classify like him. That's why my Rebbe said, Shiva Dvarim Sha'amar Admon ein halacha Kiyotzebo. So it said that the 7 cases where Admon brought down this halacha, the halacha does not follow him. So the Gemara says, ein halacha Kiyotzebo. The halacha doesn't follow those who quote him. Hakimoso halacha b'kulu. It sounds like it was just Admon by himself that the halacha would follow him. Don't have these stuff, but it doesn't make it this go. We also understand in these cases, there's 2 things that's happening, right? All these mishnayos. There is Admon stating the halacha, and then you have like Rabbi Gamliel weighing in that the halacha follows Admon. That's the Kiyotzebo. The Gemara now suggesting maybe there's a distinction between when Admon says the halacha himself versus when you have Rabbi Gamliel coming along and saying, oh, the halacha follows him. I, Bahamar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Allah Mishmei the Piskiya. So I, but we just said before that whenever the Gamliel says, I see the words of Admon to be correct, that the halacha follows him. So the Gemara says, Amar in, lo Amar lo. It sounds like the halacha only follows Admon when Rabbi Gamliel voices his support. But if Rabbi Gamliel doesn't voice his support, then the halacha won't follow Admon. Halacha goes in to say, Shnei Dvarim Sha'amar Hanan halacha Kiyotzebo. That is what it is to say. In the 2 situations, the 2 things that Hanan said that the halacha thought, in the 2 cases where Hanan quoted the halacha, Kiyotzebo, others supported him, ultimately again halacha follows him. Shiva Dvarim Sha'amar Admon Yeshmin Sha'alacha Kimoso Kiyotzebo, Yeshmin and She'in halacha Kimoso Elo Kiyotzebo. The Chosik, but by Admon, there are some situations where halacha l'maisa, the halacha won't follow him. Other times that the halacha will only follow him when he's quoted in the name of others. When we come back of Rabbi Gamliel, Yohan is Divrei Admon, halacha Kimoso inachon. When we say any place Rabbi Gamliel says the halacha follows Admon, the halacha follows Admon, but not necessarily in the other cases of Admon. So they say, so the Gemara is essentially just trying to go back and forth, trying to figure out, do we find a principle that can apply to the rhythms of Admon and Hanan? As I said, we're going to see the halacha l'maisa. There is no overarching principle. Okay? In fact, each of these cases are reckoned independently, as we're going to see in just a moment. So Rabbi said, halacha l'maisa, let's close out this sugya. How do we pass forward? So this is really a great case. Money's promised, and what happened? Money's not paid. Now the only problem is, at the time of default, what's the status of the marriage? The status of marriage? Kiddushin has already been done. So now we have a problem. So Rabbi said, if you default before Kiddushin, fine. So then what? But don't get married. Everybody go home. That's it. The problem we have over here is the default happens after Kiddushin before Kiddushin. Furthermore, 2 cases of default. What are the 2 cases of default? Case A, father default. Case B, brother, daughter, wife default. We'll say machlokes Admon Chachamim. Then there's a further machlokes Mishnah and the Brisa as to when the machlokes applies. So I'll say, here we go. Rama Baskins, Ochos Ishos, Parak of Gimel, Halacha Tes Zayin. I mentioned this before, someone asked me a couple of weeks ago why I always pray for the Rambam and not the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch, according to the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch has been the same way. In general, the derech of the Rambam is that the Rambam's formulation of halacha is often much truer to the text of the Gemara. So when you're just trying to extrapolate halacha l'maaseh from the Gemara, the lashon of the Rambam often tethers you to the sugya much more, whereas the Shulchan Aruch already is a distilled version of the halacha. So again, the bottom line is say the same thing. Now listen to what the Rambam says. Here we go. Great case. Haposek mos nefasno. So this is great. So here's how the Shulchan Aruch sets up the case. Right? So what happens? Rachel's going to marry Reuben. Rachel's father, we'll call him Yaakov. Right? Rachel's father commits to $10,000 to Rachel's husband, to Reuben. The halach ha'av l'medina acheres. The father relocates to another country. Sorry? Country. Another place. He goes out. Right? Yicholi hilom l'bal, ani lo pasakti al atzmi. Ma'an yichol l'lasos. O klinos belon in dunya, o patrein beget. So Rabbi says, number one, we constantly like Admon in the Mishnah. When it was the father who defaulted, Rachel says to her husband, listen, I didn't make the agreement. Either divorce me or marry me. Right? But don't keep me in limbo. So that's halach and one, like Amor the Mishnah. Aval, impossible alatzma, ולהגיע ידה, הרי זה יושבת עד שתמצא מה שפסקה או עד שתמס. So that's an interesting remark. Halach l'maaseh, we keep asking like the Chachamim in the bright case. If she is the one who made the commitment, then ultimately she has to figure out a way to honor it. And he has no obligation to do anything until she figures out how to honor this commitment. Always remember again, this is where she made the commitment. Remember, Admon's out for her. Remember again, what was Admon's out for her? What was his out for her? I didn't promise. I know it was me, but I'm going to extend it of my father, right? In other words, so when I say I promise you to my father, so the Rambam Haskins, like the Chachamim in the crisis case, namely that when she makes the commitment, Rachel herself makes the commitment to Reuben, and then defaults, Reuben can keep a holding pattern of kiddush until she comes up with the money, and ultimately again doesn't have to either marry her or divorce her to wait. Once again, as I said, this is the legal rule. Moral, ethical. Should a man ever keep a woman in a relationship over money? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, if she says, give me more time, I'm happy to go and try to figure out how to that's fine. She wants the time. But again, this is the legal ruling, not the moral, ethical, or legal implication of it. So let's say, halach l'maaseh, we constantly like Admon the Mishnah. Therefore, again, if father defaults, Reuben can't hold Rachel in a relationship. If Rachel defaults, he has the ability to go into a holding pattern which is proper. Incredible. Mishnah Bosai, very interesting case. Okay, so let's give the background. So let's take a look at Rashi. First, Rashi in the Mishnah. What's Rashi in the Mishnah? So let's say in the short lines of Rashi, 2, 4, 6, 7 lines into the short lines. Rashi says, watch this. This is fascinating. Moving, ma'arer al sada shebiyad Shimon. So I'll say, so here's the case. Shimon has a field. Reuven is claiming the field really belongs to me. It was stolen from me, and you bought it illegally. Now again, he's not accusing Shimon of being complicit in the theft. He's just saying, Shimon, you think you're in the field is really mine. Okay, fine. Now watch this. Reuven ma'arer al sada shebiyad Shimon. Levi Shema from the Chach doesn't mean anything. Okay, so here's the case. Right? You've got Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is in current possession of a field that he bought from Levi. So Levi sold Shimon a field. Reuven says, Shimon, that field if you have, that's my field. That's my field. Levi stole it from me and sold it to you. Okay, here's the wrinkle. The Mishnah says, Pasale means, let's say, that when Levi sold the field to Shimon, they drew up a document, and one of the witnesses on the bill of sale is Ruvain. So Ruvain is a witness. Such a good case. Ruvain is a witness on the sale document,